Prologue: The desert night was still, the air heavy with an eerie silence. The only sound was the occasional rustle of sagebrush, carried by the wind. Deep within the Navajo Nation, the land held secrets that few dared to uncover. Chapter 1. The warning. John Blackhorse had heard the stories growing up, tales of the Naldloshi, the skinwalker. As a child, he dismissed them as mere legends, but now, at the age of 25, he found himself returning to his ancestral home, where those same stories took on a new and terrifying reality. John's grandmother, Nanai, was the village elder and a respected healer. She greeted him with a warm embrace but quickly grew serious. "John, there are things you need to know," she said. "The skinwalker has been seen again. You must be careful." John nodded, recalling the many warnings from his youth. But he was a rational man, a skeptic by nature. He shrugged off his grandmother's words as superstition. He was here to help her, not chase shadows. Chapter 2. The first encounter. One evening, after a long day of repairs around the house, John decided to take a walk. The sun had just set, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. As he strolled through the desert, he heard a faint rustling behind him. Turning quickly, he saw nothing but the barren landscape. "Just the wind," he muttered, continuing his walk. But the feeling of being watched grew stronger. He quickened his pace, heart pounding in his chest. Then he heard it, a whisper, almost too faint to discern. "John." He spun around again, and this time, he saw a figure in the distance. It was a coyote, standing on a rise, its eyes glinting with an unnatural intelligence. He froze, recalling his grandmother's words. The coyote stared at him for what felt like an eternity before it turned and vanished into the night. Chapter 3. The transformation. Disturbed by the encounter, John returned home. He told Nanai about the coyote, but she only nodded, her face grim. "It is a warning, John. The skinwalker is near. You must not go out alone after dark." That night, John struggled to sleep. He tossed and turned, his mind racing. Eventually, exhaustion overcame him, and he drifted into a restless slumber. He awoke to the sound of footsteps outside his window. Peering through the curtains, he saw a figure moving through the yard. It looked like a man, but there was something off. The way it moved, almost gliding, sent a chill down his spine. Grabbing a flashlight, John stepped outside. "Who's there?" he called out, his voice trembling. The figure stopped and slowly turned to face him. Under the beam of his flashlight, John saw its eyes, dark, hollow, and devoid of humanity. The figure began to change, its form shifting and contorting. Fur sprouted from its skin, its face elongating into a snout. Within moments, the man was gone, replaced by the coyote. It bared its teeth in a sinister grin before bounding into the darkness. Chapter 4. The haunting. John raced back inside, bolting the door behind him. He found Nanai already awake, chanting softly, sprinkling corn pollen around the house. "It's trying to get inside," she said. "We must stay together and stay strong." For days, the skinwalker tormented them. It scratched at the walls, whispered through the windows, and left dead animals on their doorstep. Each night, it grew bolder, testing their defenses. One night, as John was closing the windows, he saw it again. The skinwalker stood at the edge of the yard, its eyes burning with a malevolent glow. It began to walk toward the house, its movements slow and deliberate. John's breath caught in his throat as he watched it approach. Nani's chanting grew louder, her voice filled with urgency. She handed John a pouch. "This is for protection. When the time comes, you'll know what to do." Chapter 5. The attack. The final confrontation came on a moonless night. The air was thick with tension. John and Nanai sat in the dimly lit living room, waiting. The scratching at the door began, slow and deliberate. "John." The voice was his mother's, long dead. "Let me in, son." John's heart ached, but he held firm. "You're not real," he whispered. The door shook violently, the wood splintering. The skinwalker was trying to break through. With a determined look, Nanai began her chants, louder and more forceful than before. John felt a surge of strength. He opened the pouch and scattered its contents, a mixture of herbs and sacred objects, across the threshold. The skinwalker let out a blood-curdling scream, its form flickering between man and beast. In a final act of desperation, the skinwalker lunged at John, but the protective barrier held. The creature was thrown back, its form twisting and writhing before dissolving into the night. Chapter 6. The aftermath. Dawn broke, and the air was still. The skinwalker was gone, banished by the strength of tradition and the power of belief. John embraced Nanai, tears of relief streaming down his face. "You did well, grandson," she said. "The spirits are with us." From that day forward, John never doubted the old stories. He knew that some legends were more than just tales. They were warnings and lessons from the past, meant to protect the living. And in the quiet of the desert night, he often thought he could still hear the whispers, reminding him to respect the unseen forces that walked the land. Chapter 7. A final encounter. Weeks passed, and life began to return to normal. The farm flourished under John's care, and the dark memories of the skinwalker's torment started to fade. But one evening, as John was tending to the livestock, he noticed something strange. The animals were restless, their eyes wide with fear. He felt it before he saw it, the oppressive presence that sent shivers down his spine. Turning slowly, John saw the figure standing at the edge of the property. It was the skinwalker, its eyes glowing with a familiar malevolence. But this time, it didn't approach. Instead, it raised a hand and pointed at John, its lips curling into a snarl. "This isn't over," it seemed to say, its voice echoing in John's mind. John stood his ground, his heart pounding in his chest. "Leave us in peace," he demanded, his voice steady. "You have no power here." The skinwalker let out a low growl, its form shimmering as if caught between worlds. For a moment, it seemed to flicker, and then it was gone, leaving behind a sense of foreboding. Epilogue. The legacy. The encounter with the skinwalker left a lasting mark on John. He knew that the battle was far from over, but he also understood the importance of vigilance and respect for the old ways. With Nani's guidance, he continued to protect the farm, honoring the traditions that kept them safe. In the heart of the Navajo Nation, the legend of the skinwalker remained a powerful reminder of the thin veil between the natural and supernatural worlds. And as long as John and his family remembered the lessons of the past, they knew they could face whatever darkness came their way. In the quiet of the desert night, the whispers continued, carrying with them the stories of those who had faced the skinwalker and lived to tell the tale. And in those whispers, John found the strength to keep fighting, knowing that the spirits of his ancestors were always watching over him.